Oracle shares are slightly higher today. Now, there's a lot going on. The company did announce the departure of CEO Safra Catz. She'll be replaced by co-CEOs Clay McGuirk and Mike Sicilia. Catz will shift to executive vice chair of the board of directors, so she's not leaving the company. And in the meantime, we're also getting more headlines on what the U.S. TikTok sort of deal is going to look like, which will almost certainly involve Oracle, perhaps in a very large way. Here to talk more about all of this, Ivana Delevska, Spear Invest founder and CIO. Ivana, you have a small position in Oracle in your tech ETF, SPRX. It has been Oracle's year in a lot of ways, but this Catz transition was a bit of a surprise. What do you make of that?
We weren't entirely surprised, Julie, because if you look at it, the company has been going through a lot of transitions over the past year plus. So it's not surprising that there would be management change associated with it. So between them trying to go after large cloud deals, this TikTok deal, I think there is a lot going on, and they're trying to set the company up for the next leg of growth. So the management team that will be able to do that may be different than what they've had in the past.
Gotcha.
So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, with that huge backlog that they have now to work through. And then I'm looking at some of the headlines and some of our reporter notes who are on the call now. There's a White House call detailing some of the details of the TikTok deal. And it sounds like, there is this consortium. There's reporting that Oracle is going to be really key in providing the security rails around this new TikTok. What does that mean, sort of in a material way for Oracle?
Well, I think it has two implications, right? So it's first a customer that they're going to be able to provide services to in a large way, but it also sets Oracle up as an example of a company that can do these types of things, almost like a lead case, right? So I think there is going to be more deals like this to come, not necessarily with Chinese companies, but even from the US companies, where people will feel comfortable having their data on the Oracle Cloud and using AI agents on top of that data in a secure way.
So as we mentioned, you have a relatively small position in Oracle in the ETF. What would, I don't know what kind of criteria you're using, but what would convince you that it needs to be a larger position?
So we are actually looking at their enterprise business and trying to see how they can scale this to service their enterprise customers with AI agents. I think there is a case to be made on top of the large CapEx numbers, which I think investors were excited about. We're looking more from the angle of, can this be an asset-light business model that can provide AI agent-type services to enterprises that already have their data on the Oracle platform? So I think it could be a pretty interesting story. There is still a lot of proving to be done, right? Because they dropped the ball in the prior cloud cycle, and now it's really at a point where you have so much innovation that they can kind of reaccelerate and gain back their share. But that's basically what would make us more comfortable if we see some progress on that front.
Interesting. All right, so something to watch for them. I want to switch gears and talk about another big tech story that we're watching, and that is Micron, which is set to report after the close on Tuesday. Last week, it had a 12-session winning streak that just ended on Friday. That was a record for the stock. So obviously there's some enthusiasm going into these earnings. Do you think they'll be able to deliver?
So Julie, they will definitely be able to deliver. The question is going to be, will it be above expectations? And as you mentioned, the stock has run up quite a bit. They pre-announced in August, which set the stage for a big beat that investors are expecting. So we're not involved right now for that reason. Expectations are a little bit ahead of where we think results will come in. But if you look at the broad data center landscape, everybody had blowout results this quarter. So I think any pullback would be an opportunity for investors to get involved.
Well, and it's interesting when we talk about the large cap tech landscape and how companies are monetizing AI. Even if it's not their main business. And Micron's an interesting case of that with its high bandwidth memory chips, because it is actually selling into specifically that AI market.
Absolutely, and I think what's even more interesting is that memory and networking is really where a lot of the performance improvement comes from. So this is why a lot of the networking plays are doing really well this year, and same as memory, where it's really a critical component in getting better performance out of the GPUs for the AI trade.
How do you think about semiconductors more broadly? Are we in a post-semi-cycle world now because of AI? It used to be, for people who aren't familiar with semiconductors, I mean, it was a very cyclical business in terms of price and demand. Is that not something that semi-investors have to worry about anymore in the same way?
So I think this is hardware will always be very cyclical just because of the way things get ordered and put into place. However, when you have such a strong tailwind and when you're so early in a secular bull market, right, what you see is these cycles really get softened out, right? So we saw with NVIDIA between the Hopper and the Blackwell architecture, there was a little bit of a pause, if you will, in terms of ramping one up versus ramping the other one down, right? But it wasn't big enough to even move the needle for their earnings. Well, usually you would see like down quarters. So we haven't really seen, even though we had a generation change, we didn't really see a pullback in terms of the numbers. So I think this will last. Because we're so early in the secular trend, I think will last for the next 2 to 3 cycles, and then you're going to start seeing a more pronounced cyclical trend.
And the top holding in your ETF is actually a company I'm not as familiar with, Astera Labs, which is a semiconductor-related company, I guess. That's a bigger holding for you guys than NVIDIA, for example. Why?
So we were really able to size up Astera Labs on the pullback going into the summer after all the people panicked from tariffs. So that's why it's such a large position for us. Right now, they're a critical provider on the networking side. So what we talked about with Micron and memory, they are a provider on the networking side, and they're really well positioned when they're gaining share from just being servicing customers like NVIDIA to multiple like Amazon and a lot of the cloud service providers directly. So they're growing their customer base and they're introducing new products, which is really making a step change difference for their earnings and revenue numbers.